Hey, it's Bryson here, out in nature, enjoying another nice day. The air is nice and brisk, crisp. It's really refreshing. It's one thing that I do like about winter hikes is that, I can, really expend some energy, do some runs, things like that, exercises, and the cool breeze, is just very refreshing. Obviously if it's super cold, it can be a little difficult, but today is a pretty mild day. So what I wanted to talk about today is the taboo against knowing who you are. So Alan Watts, he wrote a book about it, and he talked about how we live in a world where there is a taboo against people really finding out the mystery and finding out who they really are, which is that you are actually a microcosm of the entire universe, of the consciousness of the universe, what many people call God, and that you are simply a point of reference through which the entirety of all that is, ever has been, or ever will be, experiencing one story, one narrative, one series of imagery, semantic symbols, and things like that. And when I first started trying to tell people a lot about how there's pretty substantial evidence that is the case, quantum physics is demonstrating this, and then in your personal life, when you begin to have your what we call spiritual awakening, you start noticing the connectedness of you and everything around you, and realizing that you're not this stranger that you think you are, and that everybody else around you is just basically another version of you experiencing the same problems, but with different narratives and imagery. And when I ask myself, like, why is there such a taboo against it? Well, one of the reasons is pretty obvious. If we had a society where everyone knew who they were and knew how incredibly powerful they are, and knew and understood that our thoughts, intentions, and actions, every little thing we do is co-creating the collective experience, and that the stuff that's been going on this planet since March of 2020 and all these shenanigans are our own collective shadow showing itself. And if you guys have noticed, a lot of people have been showing their shadow side. And so if you think about it, if everyone knew themselves, how could we continue a reality where rigged politics, slavery, and fascism were the norm, and just something that people just accept as is? You try to talk to people about it, and they're like, oh, it's just the way it is. There are people who are just the bosses and we just have to listen to them, and continue on with this twisted system that is heavily authoritarian, hierarchical, and continues this orthodoxy of just rigged systems and economic dependency and control. Because if everybody knew that they truly are equal, how could you have any kind of systems that allow another person to declare supremacy over another? How could that happen, right? You couldn't have that. You couldn't have another person declare supremacy if they recognize we're all emanations of the same thing, that are all equal, and we're all also equally moronic and full of ourselves. I mean, if you look at the way things have just been being managed since March of 2020, and just the chaos, and just how these systems of authority who've demanded all these things of us, how they clearly don't know what they're talking about, and how they continue to make things worse, you end up realizing that, like, wow, like, these people who are in these positions that we put on these pedestals, like presidents and prime ministers, they're just another bunch of morons, just like pretty much everybody else on this planet. And you end up realizing that these people are not actually in their positions because they're superior to anybody. It's because that these are people who are such degenerates and have so badly sold their soul to this dark force that normalizes rigged systems of governance and legislation, more specifically, and things like that, and slavery systems through corrupt financial systems where some privileged group of corporations gets to just create money out of thin air based on interest-bearing debt that we call credit, and how we just have fascism where it's just clearly certain special interest control, and we have a world where people literally live without and poverty exists when this world is bountiful, all because we have to keep supposedly we have to follow this cult-like behavior of just accepting that a small group of people that can fit in one room just control and run everything. And it doesn't matter what your sovereign free will is, what your heart says, you are either doing this or else. And it's just such an outrageous idea that anyone can declare supremacy over another. There should never be any kind of just systems like this that do this. But this energy, which has taken on an autonomy of its own, that fights for itself to preserve this as the status quo, and preserve this as the status quo in a world where it is increasingly just not going to be sustainable anymore. This thing, it has to keep pushing this no matter what. It just has to keep pushing this no matter what, and we're not allowed really to question why these are. This is just the way it is. Or I shouldn't even say that you're not allowed to question, but if you do question, you will be oftentimes ridiculed and called crazy for believing that we shouldn't have this absolutely deranged and insane way of doing things that, like I said, normalizes fascism, slavery, and just rigged political games. And so they have to keep people thinking, hey, you're little old you can't do anything about it. And keep you repeating mantras and keep you control cosmology. When it comes to this force that I talk about, this negatively oriented force that you guys are aware of, that people have called everything from the enemy, the devil, the demiurge, whatever you want to call it, this thing runs the same operation over and over again, and it just does it in different forms. So, for instance, like in the past, religious organizations played this game. For instance, during the Inquisition, you had where the Catholic Church very aggressively fought to control people's perception of cosmology, or in other words, how the world works. And they also used fear of the unknown to control people, to get them to see these authorities as their salvation, as their saviors, to keep people from thinking that they need to find some sort of savior outside of themselves, instead of looking inside and letting the light in, letting the Christ consciousness, come into you. And when you look at the modern scientific establishment, they're basically doing the same thing. They fight very hard to control cosmology, the narrative on how the world works, and they use fear of the unknown to control people. And it doesn't matter if they repeatedly keep saying things that aren't even right. Because why? They have programmed people to be afraid. And when you program someone with fear, it is very hard for someone to get that fear out of them. And so that's just basically what I wanted to talk about regarding this. I don't want to make this video too long, but basically just understand that there is a taboo in this world against you uncovering these higher levels and layers of consciousness and awareness of your connectedness and who you are and the power that you have, and understand that a power much greater than any power in this world of these phony, fake, systems that are corrupted and rigged, that is guiding you and will always provide avenues. Just trust it and watch and see. You will see. You'll think something bad is going to happen to you, and then you'll just see another opportunity open up. So everybody out there, stay strong. Thanks for listening to me ramble. This just kind of came on my mind today, and just wanted to talk about it a little bit. So have a wonderful day and take care.